US Federal Reserve raises interest rates by 0.75%, the biggest jump since 1994, amid efforts to fight soaring inflation. But more rate hikes are expected down the road. The Fed also downgrades its growth outlook for the US economy to 1.7%. Seoul and Washington agree on deeper dialogue spanning both security and trade ties. South Korea's Foreign Minister Park Jin calls for such 2+2 ministerial meetings as he engages with top US officials on his 4-day trip to Washington, D.C. South Korea postpones its second launch of its indigenous Nuri space rocket, set for Thursday, as researchers find issues with the oxidizer tank. The launch has been delayed indefinitely.
Hello and welcome to New Day at Arirang. It's Thursday, June 16th, 8 a.m. here in Seoul, South Korea. I'm Lee Seung-jae.
And I'm Oh Soo-young. Thanks for joining us this morning, because over the next hour we'll be giving you a look at some of the biggest headlines of the day and experts' insights on key issues facing Korea and the rest of the world. US monetary policymakers met on Wednesday and made the largest interest rate hike in almost 3 decades.
That's right. It's raising US interest rates by 0.75% to battle inflation. Now, Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says that more hikes could be on the way. Kim Hyun-sung starts us off.
The Federal Reserve on Wednesday raised interest rates by 75 basis points, the biggest step it has taken in a single policy meeting since 1994.
Our overarching focus is using our tools to bring inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored.
This bold move will put the Fed's benchmark short-term rate to range from 1.5% to 1.75%. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said that this rate hike is an unusually large one, but there could be a similar hike in July.
And I do not expect moves of this size to be common. From the perspective of today, either a 50 basis point or a 75 basis point increase seems most likely at our next meeting.
The decision came as the Fed is trying to combat inflationary pressure, made worse by Russia's invasion of Ukraine and China's COVID restrictions. Just last month, the U.S. saw the fastest inflation growth in more than 40 years, with the Consumer Price Index for May rising 8.6% on year. Inflation risks and global economic setbacks prompted the Fed to cut its U.S. growth projection from 2.8% to 1.7%. The Federal Open Market Committee has 4 policy meetings left for this year, and rates are expected to be raised to at least 3% by the end of those meetings. But the Fed's bold pace is sparking concerns among some economists on whether it's possible to dampen inflation without inducing a recession. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
US stocks jumped on Wednesday following the Federal Reserve's biggest interest rate hike in 28 years. The S&P 500 ended trading up 1.5% to halt the 5-day decline. The Dow added 1% and the Nasdaq edged up 2.5%. The reversal comes as aggressive monetary policy from the Fed gave investors the confidence that the central bank was committed to curbing inflation. Meanwhile, South Korean stocks plunged on Wednesday ahead of the Fed's announcement due to concerns over high inflation and a global recession. The benchmark Kospi sunk to a 19-month low, closing below the 2,500 mark. The Kosdaq closed below 800 for a 22-month low. Wrapping up his 4-day trip to the United States, South Korea's top diplomat met with the US Secretary of Commerce in a bid to boost the two countries' cooperation on semiconductors and supply chains. He also proposed holding a 2+2 meeting between the country's foreign and commerce ministers. Our Kim Da-mi has the details.
Seoul and Washington's economic and technological cooperation is expected to grow stronger on the back of a possible 2+2 meeting between their foreign and commerce ministers. South Korea's top diplomat Park Jin proposed the idea to U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo on Wednesday, which Washington welcomed. The two sides agreed to team up on a system that will facilitate an early-stage response to problems in the supply and demand of key materials in the Indo-Pacific region. That also includes a cooperation in the field of nuclear power and entering the overseas nuclear power plant market. Also top of Wednesday's talk was the need for developing the Indo-Pacific economic framework based on openness, transparency, and inclusiveness, as well as a box called for Washington's support for South Korea's bid for the 2030 World Expo in Busan. Bak's meetup with Raimondo wrapped up his 4-day visit to the U.S. in what Bak called productive and meaningful, as the two nations are about to thrive as a comprehensive strategic alliance at the global level. Earlier on Wednesday, he also met with South Korean expats at the old Korean legation in Washington, where he reaffirmed his promise to make great efforts so that South Korea becomes a pivotal global country for world freedom, peace, and prosperity. 김다미, Arirang News.
Now, Nudi, the first South Korean-made rocket, was set to be launched for the second time on Thursday.
However, it's been postponed indefinitely, and our reporter Kim Do-yeon is standing by at the site. Do-yeon, what's going on?
That's right, guys. At around 2:05 p.m. yesterday, engineers found an issue with the rocket's oxidizer level sensor located in its first stage. As our team has been reporting throughout the process, Nudi was ready to go, but now it's been transported back to its assembly site with less than 24 hours before what was supposed to be the launch time. Take a listen.
After trying to figure out the issue at the launch pad, we realized it was not possible to get up close and analyze the problem while it's standing up. That's why we decided it's impossible to carry out the launch pad at the moment.
As you heard, they're still not sure what the exact cause of the problem was, but as of now, all they said is it could be the actual sensor or it could be the cable or terminal box. The problem was clear, with the sensor showing the same number when it was supposed to be changing as the rocket was slowly stood up. Oxidizers are used to propel the rocket, and accurate readings are essential for the launch. Until this point, engineers had found no problems, having transported Nudi to its launch pad and proceeded with the last preparations.
So, Do-yeon, from what I understand, this definitely wasn't your first Nudi launch, so you've experienced delays before. I remember last time back in October, it was only for an hour, but definitely a completely different delay that we're looking here. So, what can we expect from now on?
Sorry, Seung-jae. With the rocket being stood up Wednesday morning, the scenes here were definitely hopeful. But you're right, it makes me appreciate the first launch more. Despite being delayed an hour, it was largely by the plan and the launch actually happened. The second launch had already been delayed by 24 hours. It's very disappointing for everyone here and the public, but take a listen to what the engineer in charge had to say about this.
I really don't know what to do. There are a lot of people here, so I feel sorry for what's happened. But no matter what it takes, we need to fix the problem to get Nuri launched. That said, we will resolve the issue as quickly as possible so we can try again soon.
As he said, he's focused on getting back on course as soon as possible. The Launch Management Committee will release more details on this, but without clarifying the issue, they cannot be sure when the new launch date will be. South Korea told the international community that the expected launch window is from June 15th to 23rd. However, with that not looking to be possible, the country may have to go through further procedures to give notification of a new launch window, which could take some time as well. That's all I got for now. Back to you guys.
All right, a big thank you to Do-yeon and the team down in Gyeongbokgung there. In the meantime, Chinese President Xi Jinping has reaffirmed support for Moscow in a telephone conversation with his Russian counterpart.
Regarding the Ukraine war, she said that a proper settlement needs to be reached. Our Kim Yo-sun has more.
The leaders of China and Russia held a phone conversation Wednesday afternoon to renew show of support for each other's core interests. According to China's Foreign Ministry, President Xi Jinping told his Russian counterpart that Beijing stands ready to promote stable and long-term development of pragmatic cooperation with Moscow. He further highlighted the importance of deepening strategic coordination between the two countries. Regarding Ukraine, she said that all related parties should seek a proper resolution in a responsible manner. In return, Russian President Vladimir Putin supported Beijing's opposition to interference in domestic affairs, including in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. In their second publicized call since Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, the two leaders also discussed a range of security issues, including a bolstering of military cooperation. The news comes as Washington vowed additional military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine.
I'm especially pleased to be able to announce today that the United States will provide an additional $1 billion security assistance package for Ukraine.
President Joe Biden told his Ukrainian counterpart that his country plans to send another $225 million in humanitarian aid. This follows pleas from President Volodymyr Zelensky for more long-range missiles as fighting remains fierce in the eastern part of the country. Kim Hye-san, Arirang News.
The World Health Organization is warning that there is a real risk that monkeypox will gain a foothold in Europe, urging governments to take action to curb the spread of the virus. The global agency's European director explained during a briefing Wednesday that Europe is now at the epicenter of an escalating monkeypox outbreak. He said 25 countries across Europe have reported over 1,500 cases so far. The WHO, however, did say that mass vaccination is not recommended or needed as of now.
It's time now for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into some of the key issues in the spotlight right now. South Korea on June 1st began issuing short-term travel visas and e-visas after more than 2 years of suspending new applications due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
That's right. This could certainly be good news for all the tourism sector here in the nation, as well as for all those that have been looking forward to visiting us here in South Korea. So how big will the inflow of international travelers be for this summer season and beyond? For this, we connect with Assistant Professor Sumire Zelyana, Department of Tourism at Hanyang University. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So first and foremost, Professor, as soon as South Korea began issuing these short-term visas, we heard about the Japanese citizens rushing to their embassies to get them. So how popular do you expect South Korea to be for travelers this summer?
Well, I expect quite popular to be this summer. Well, you mentioned Japan. However, not only Japan, but people from our traditional markets, for example, in Southeast Asia, let's say Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia. So tourists from these countries, they have been eager to visit Korea for 2 years now. And given the fact that now they don't have obligatory quarantine measures, and even when returning back to their countries, they will not be some of them will not be subjected to obligatory PCR tests. So for these reasons, I do expect this summer to be quite successful.
And Professor, do we know which countries are looking at South Korea for their next travel destination now that we have these visa applications open and quarantine measures lifted?
Well, we just now mentioned Japan and Southeast Asian countries as our traditional markets. However, we can also count on some non-traditional markets, for example, European countries. So during the pandemic's era, so many European youngsters, they were bound to their houses, to surfing online, and they were looking for new, refreshing content. So what they found is about South Korea, K-pop, K-fashion, K-culture overall, and they became quite interested. So I think they would be eager to visit this summer. However, I cannot say the same for, let's say, China and Hong Kong. As we all know, they are subjected to obligatory quarantine from 7 to 14 days and many PCR tests. So for that reason, I would not expect many of them to visit us this summer.
You know, I just remember shopping used to be kind of at the top of the list of reasons for international travelers wanting to travel to South Korea. I mean, do you think that's kind of changed with all the craze for K-culture? And do you think the tourism industry will cater to the change in demand?
Well, we just now mentioned Chinese and Hong Kong tourists, and they have been known as very good shoppers in South Korea, and they have been so frequent guests in duty-free department stores and shopping malls. So given the fact that many of them will not be able to visit this summer, I would expect shopping as a part of tourism to decrease. However, we can still count on other parts of tourism, for example, medical tourism. So many people abroad who would like to undertake some non-essential treatments, for example, plastic surgery or skincare treatment. So many of them have been waiting for this moment for 2 years now. So I would guess that many of them would like to visit this summer. And we should also keep in mind that we already have K-pop concerts scheduled and many festivals scheduled. This is so popular among young people, and I expect these to be major drivers of demand.
Right, hopefully we'll see some of that tourism coming back to South Korea. But today, Professor, this is where we'll have to leave the interview. Thank you so much for your insights. Looking forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you so much.
And that's going to wrap up the first half of New Day at Arirang.
But do stick around. Coming up in the second half of New Day at Arirang, it's been over a month since the start of the Yoon administration and the so-called Yongsan era. So what kind of changes will this Yongsan era bring? We're going to find out during Global Insight, so we'll be back in just a moment.
Share South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduce a Korean New Day. A Korean survivor of Japan's wartime sex slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis and pledged to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang, what matters?
I feel so good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Forever.
Welcome back to the second half of New Day at Arirang. Now, due to soaring prices for oil and other commodities, South Korea's import prices climbed once again in May after edging down a month earlier.
The Bank of Korea says the overall import price index last month came to 153.74. This is up 3.6% compared to April. Compared to a year earlier, import prices have risen more than 36%, showing on-year increases for 15 straight months. The central bank attributed the increase to the war in Ukraine, sending global oil prices to historic highs, with the price of Dubai crude, Korea's benchmark, rising around 63% on year. Export prices were up too. Compared to the month before, export prices were up around 3%, rising for a fifth straight month, led by petroleum products. Officials from the government and the ruling party agreed that the key economic policy should focus on recovery led by the private sector. To achieve this goal, they aim to take a two-track approach to deregulation and investment. Our Lee Kyung-eun explains further.
1 month into taking office, the Yoon Suk-yeol administration is dealing with high inflation and a stagnant growth rate. To address the serious economic challenges, officials from the government and the ruling People Power Party met on Wednesday to lay out the new policy direction.
We call for economic growth led by the private sector and a dramatic shift in policy direction.
For that, the new government will go for a two-track approach. One, aggressive deregulation for businesses. Among the measures requested by the PPP are corporate tax cuts and reducing punishments for businesses. In the meantime, the government will boost investment by lowering the tax burden, especially in the industries of the future.
Other countries are investing in high-tech like they are in a war. South Korea cannot catch up unless it facilitates investment through tax cuts.
Playing a key role in the future growth will be startups, and the government will help them improve their creativity, productivity, and resilience so that they can coexist with big corporations.
Our goal is to set up a comprehensive venture ecosystem from startup candidates right up to global unicorn companies. The key will be a dramatic regulatory reform.
The government's other key focus will be on stabilizing inflation and improving people's livelihoods. The PPP requested a further oil tax cut and greater help for struggling social groups, like raising the basic national pension for the elderly in poverty and providing more assistance for single parents. Based on what's discussed, the Finance Ministry will announce the finalized policy details on Thursday. 이경은, Arirang News.
South Korea's production and exports of cars last month were up almost 20% from a year earlier. And eco-friendly models in particular were up around 45%, both for exports and in the domestic market too. Lee Dae-yeon reports.
South Korea's auto production and exports both saw an on-year increase in May. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy says this is largely due to the base effect of last year's low figures caused by auto chip shortage issues. Data released on Wednesday shows that auto production increased 19.8% to over 307,000 units. This is the 18th straight month that the figure exceeded 300,000. Exports also surged 19.1% to nearly 183,000 units. This was largely driven by sales of subcompact cars and eco-friendly vehicles. Along with the export volume, export sales saw a rise of nearly 19% to $4.15 billion, an all-time high for the month of May. Among all cars, eco-friendly vehicles are leading the trend. Domestic consumption of eco-friendly cars jumped 45.3% last month to 41,000 units. This is the first time that the monthly figure surpassed 40,000. Export volume also rose more than 45% to over 44,000 units. It's now the 17th month that the figure has seen an on-year increase. An expert says dramatic production development in eco-friendly cars is contributing to this trend.
South Korean auto giants like Hyundai and Kia are now securing the best technology to produce eco-friendly cars. These vehicles have gained world-best titles, and this will eventually contribute to high demand for domestically built eco-friendly cars.
However, he added auto chip supply issues should first be resolved to meet the demand, as eco-friendly cars require at least double the number of chips that are used in cars with regular engines. Lee Dae-yeon, Arirang News.
The South Korean government joined the Mineral Security Partnership aimed at stabilizing and diversifying the supply of key materials. The U.S.-led initiative includes 10 other nations, among them Canada, Japan, and the European Commission. Now, these minerals are essential to clean energy and other advanced technologies. The launch ceremony in Toronto was attended by Second Vice Foreign Minister Lee Do-hoon and Yoo Bum-min, a senior trade ministry official. Now, on the sidelines, the vice minister also held separate talks with Jose Fernandez, the U.S. Undersecretary for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment. They discussed ways to strengthen cooperation on economic security, particularly in key minerals, semiconductors, and batteries. Now, the Gyeongbokgung Palace in central Seoul is going to offer tours in Spanish starting this week. According to South Korea's Cultural Heritage Administration, the tours run every Friday and Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and 3 p.m. Admissions cost 3,000 won for adults, or around $2.30, but guided tours are free of charge. The palace also offers tours in English, Chinese, Japanese, Indonesian, and Vietnamese. The Spanish language program aims to provide information about the history and culture of the palace and the Joseon dynasty to a wider audience. Now, the South Korean capital is also attracting more and more people to some of its iconic landmarks. To ensure that visually impaired visitors can also enjoy these hotspots, Seoul Tourism Organization is running special programs. Shin Yeon tagged along to show how they work.
Welcome to Seoul City's latest tour, a tour for the visually impaired. Here, visitors have to rely on what they can hear and touch, like this.
발로 한번 이렇게 밀어보세요. 어때요? 이게 비가 와서 물이 있어서 미끄럽기도 하지만 실제로 돌이라는 느낌이 안 들어도 아주 반질반질해요.
Seoul Tourism Organization has been holding these tours since 2020, and this year it has prepared 3 courses. One in Gyeongbokgung Palace, one in Changgyeongbokgung Palace, and one around Namsan Mountain Park.
Here, visually impaired tourists can enjoy the beautiful landscapes in the capital, all thanks to specially trained professional tour guides.
Park Myung-suk is one of the 57 tour guides certified by Seoul Tourism Organization to lead tours for the blind. Though she leads a smaller group of people, it requires much more interaction than other tours.
Whenever I do tours for the visually impaired, I make sure to be extra descriptive. I try to draw an image in their heads by explaining everything around them, from the colors, the weather, the surroundings. I ask participants to touch things around them so they can get a better picture of what's in front of them.
Her hard work pays off when participants praise the tour.
I came all the way from Jeollabuk-do province and I enjoyed every minute of it. I could picture everything the tour guide said to me. It also helped that I could touch some items she was explaining about.
Tours for the visually impaired will run until September 7th. Up to 4 people, 2 visually impaired participants and 2 caretakers can go on each tour. Reservations can be made online on a first-come, first-served basis. Shin Yeon, Arirang News.
It's now time for Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. Now, South Korea's new President Yoon Suk-yeol took office last month as the country's 20th leader, and he began what he called the Yongsan era of openness and communication for the nation, moving the presidential office and his residence as well to the capital's central district of Yongsan. So as random as this move may have seemed, the district of Yongsan embodies the cultural and societal significance that the administration aims to pursue over the next 5 years. Meaning Dragon Mountain in Korean, which is believed to be inspired by the shape of the mountains in the district. Yongsan-gu is located in the geographic center of Seoul, between the Hangang River and Mount Namsan. And well, to discuss what lies ahead in this Yongsan era for South Korea, we connect with Song Tae-ryun, Professor of Law at Kyung University, joining us via Skype, and Manuel Yauschnig, joining me here in the studio. Very warm welcome to you both. And well, my first question going to you, Professor Song. Now, first of all, could you please define what Yongsan era means for us and what it really signifies for the Korean people?
Well, the immediate significance is that the presidential office is not at the long history of the Blue House site for the first time since 1948, when the first modern government launched in Korea. It also signifies the move away from the whole issue of imperial presidency, which the isolated nature of the Blue House location and also the palatial setting played a part. President Yoon wanted to project the image of open and very transparent government, and he first picked the Gwanghwamun government complex as a new office, but for various reasons it was not possible. So Yongsan has become an accidental presidential office, mainly because of the Department of Defense building, and at least the necessary infrastructure for security, underground bunker, and so forth with them. But I think that the prospect is that now we see the president on the street during his commute, and he tries very hard to blend into the everyday life of the citizens. So it is a new era with a new look of the president and what it signifies.
And Professor Song, well, it was somewhat a accidental sort of transition, I suppose, of presidential the presidential office, as well as a new era for the nation. But what is the historical or geographical or even cultural significance of Yongsan that now makes it the bedrock of the new Yoon administration's governance?
Well, historically, Yongsan has a little bit of sad face because the Yongsan, throughout the history, in many different parts of history, was a site of foreign troops. We can go all the way back to Mongolian era, where Mongolian troops stayed there, and the Japanese troops stayed in several occasions. And recently, with a little bit of a different relationship, Yongsan has been known for a long time for the U.S. military base is still located there. And because of that, the development restrictions has been pretty severe recently. But now that the military base is scheduled to finish, actually, they were supposed to have been moved already. So what we have is a vast real estate right in the middle of Seoul that we can develop, and probably with the cultural significance, historical significance, it will put in more national or traditional theme into it. And with the presidential office, probably we can plan some theme with some people suggest that we could make it as just like the U.S. DC setting, where there are a lot of monuments and also a culturally significant site for citizens of Seoul.
And of course, Yongsan was very much known for its for being a rather international district, especially with the very iconic town of Itaewon located in the heart of it. And while bringing you into the conversation, Manuel, now we saw the town of Itaewon and the surrounding other towns in the Yongsan district becoming something of a ghost town, really, because of the withdrawal of the US troops, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic. And it used to be a very lively and bubbly area, but well, now that we're in somewhat what some call the post-pandemic era, and also now the new Yongsan era, do you see some of that business coming back? Are you seeing the streets starting to liven up again?
I mean, overall, I have to say, like, business is definitely coming back. Like, you see more people going out, more people enjoying time with their friends outside. So I'm pretty sure we're going towards the pre-pandemic stage. Regarding the move of the US military base, it pretty much depends on what kind of business you operate, So I think it mainly hit the day-to-day traffic, which means it decreased. But on the other hand, more locals discovered this area or rediscovered this area. So I think it's kind of compensated. And obviously, COVID hit Itaewon pretty hard, and it's now a great pleasure for me to see it slowly coming back. But for example, the east side of Itaewon, it was always lively with a lot of shop openings, luxury department stores. So this was doing quite well even during the pandemic. And now, ever since the curfew got lifted, I think the west side, the so-called party side, is now also coming back, and we are definitely on the right track.
Right, so things are starting to liven up back in the Yongsan area, especially with the presidential office now located in it. And well, Professor Song, now there are already plans to really ramp up the district with new landmarks as well. So what are some of the major developments that we're going to see?
Well, the biggest thing, I think, is the park. It already has the sizable park, but with the plan to convert all the real estate previously a U.S. base, it's going to rival the Central Park in New York. Central Park is about 3.4 million square meters, but the new plan, the Yongsan, is going to be close to about 3 million square meters. So, and in that, there is a National Museum, a War Museum, and also different installations that we can put. So as our guest was saying, it has the international flavor to it nearby, and we also had a plan for international business district plan, but not been implemented for decades. So with that, this real estate opening up has a very, very exciting and very significant development prospect for Seoul and for Korea. I think I'm personally very excited about the park idea.
Well, just passing by the district, really, you can see it sort of buzzing with energy already. And every weekend, it just seems to be full of, well, hipsters, really, just going there to check out the latest eateries and things. And Manuel, I believe you also opened a restaurant in Hannam, a neighborhood in Yongsan district next to Itaewon, where President Yoon will be, where his residence is now going to be based. And well, why are more and more hipsters really turning to this area?
Well, let's say Hannam-dong pretty much covers east side of Itaewon as well as Hannam-Ogori. And as you already mentioned, there are a lot of new openings, bars, restaurants, and also new flagship stores. But I think Hannam-dong has been a very hip and trendy place ever since day one, you know, like a lot of celebrities and a lot of people from art and fashion are living there. And now also the so-called new locals are discovering this area because of some attraction points, for example, the flagship store from Gucci. Then you have the lifestyle complex, Hannam Sounds, or 9-1. Then you have the Hyundai Music Library with a great vinyl studio. And also the D Museum, which now moved to Seongsu. And that's also the area where we opened our restaurant, the Revit.
Professor Song, well, do you think that this move to Yongsan is going to help the administration really in its push to become more open and global as well?
Well, already the look of it, because he's closer to the people and he's having media conferences on the way to work and back. So it is open optically, but I think that it requires a little bit more to shed the imperial presidency image. It requires not only the address of his office, but power sharing structure and attendant laws. President should be more subject to check and balance system. And I think in that infrastructure of laws and regulations, that change will truly deliver his campaign promise that he's going to be more open, and also imperial presidency era is over, and Yongsan will signify the new openness of Korea. And I think it's going to be exciting development for the Korean politics.
Right, and in addition to Korean politics, many are hoping that this will help Korea become more international as well. And really, in that regard, Manuel, do you think Seoul could become the next Hong Kong or Singapore?
Well, I was living in Hong Kong for some time, and I was traveling around Asia quite a bit. But I think Korea or Seoul is a very unique place. The love and appreciation of the people for food and the dining scene is like really phenomenal. I mean, always you see new trendy places. And for example, 5 of the 50 best bars in Asia are from Korea, from Seoul, you know, with Charles H. ranked as number 7. So overall, I think there's a huge potential, but I still think this language barrier might be a small problem. You know, I mean, even the business environment for foreign businesses has improved tremendously, but compared to an English-speaking culture, it might gonna be hard. I mean, it's not a must to have an English-speaking culture, but it definitely matters.
Right, and would you say there are any further changes or regulations that need to be improved in order, as a global businessman, to really want to expand in South Korea?
Well, I'm a small business owner at the moment, so there's not much to comment from my side. But I think for me, the 2 most important things are bureaucracy, as well as how easy it is to get information, you know? I mean, trust me, bureaucracy is an issue all around the world. I, as a European, I speak out of experience, but if you get the process in Korea right, it's super fast. You know, so this surprises me all the time. And the other thing is, like, as I mentioned already, the English, the language barrier. So it's quite hard to find very important information for you in order to set up a business, in order to navigate. So if a lot of those information could be accessible in English, it would definitely boost the whole environment.
You see, Professor Song, before we go now, we've already seen the Yoon administration make some efforts to make Korean standards more international. And how important is that in terms of, well, dealing with bureaucracy and administrative procedures in terms of, you know, in order to push forward this new Yongsan era?
I think his conservative government has that theme already, deregulation in the business sector, but at the same time, Korea has been growing in the international role. So he's going to be going to NATO, and he's been in steps with the global friends to be a significant player in the global affairs. So I think that the theme will continue, and the Yongsan would be probably a good site because of the cultural significance and the nature that the international flavor is already infused in it. So with that kind of significance and also changes in its policies, probably Yongsan will mean something rather than being an accidental presidential office that it came to be.
Well, hopefully the accident will lead to good things over the next 5 years, and we'll see the Yongsan era really opening up not only just Seoul but South Korea, not just domestically but also globally as well. So that was Song Se-ryun, Professor of Law at Kyung University, and Manuel Yao-Shunig joining me in studio today from MRJ Group. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. One of the two suspects linked to the disappearance of British journalist Dom Phillips and indigenous expert Bruno Pereira has reportedly confessed to killing and dismembering the pair. This, according to local media outlet Band News TV, although authorities have not yet issued a statement. The suspects were identified by police as brothers Amarildo and Ossini da Costa. Amarildo was arrested the previous week on weapons charges, while Ossini was taken into custody on Tuesday. Phillips and Pereira went missing over a week ago in a lawless part of the rainforest while Phillips was working on a sustainable development book. They had received death threats before their disappearance. A ceremony took place on Wednesday to unveil a new street sign marked Jamal Khashoggi Way outside the Saudi Arabian embassy in Washington. A portion of the street has been dedicated to the former Washington Post journalist who was killed at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in October 2018. The sign was unveiled just after 1:14 p.m., symbolizing the last moment Khashoggi was seen alive. At the time, Saudi officials blamed the murder on a rogue operation by a team of agents. However, U.S. intelligence services believe the murder was ordered by the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The prince has denied the allegation. The ceremony comes a day after the White House announced that U.S. President Joe Biden will visit Saudi Arabia next month. U.S. tech giant Qualcomm has won its appeal against a $1.05 billion fine by EU antitrust regulators. The legal battle began when the European Commission ruled in 2018 that Qualcomm had paid billions to Apple from 2011 to 2016 to exclusively use its chips. Europe's General Court invalidated the EU fine and faulted the Commission over procedural irregularities that affected Qualcomm's defense rights. The legal win for the US chipmaker is a major setback in the crackdown on big tech led by the EU's antitrust chief Margrethe Vestager. This fine is one of several levied by Vestager on companies such as Alphabet, as well as truck makers and banks, over alleged anti-competitive practices. A 10-year-old boy has been rescued after spending 4 days trapped in a narrow well. According to officials in India's central state of Chhattisgarh, Rahul Sahu, who is both speech and hearing impaired, fell into the 24-meter deep well while playing in his backyard on Friday afternoon. Rescue operations had been hampered by bad weather, as well as venomous snakes and scorpions. Sahu is in a stable but weak condition and is being treated at a specialty hospital. Uncovered wells are common in Indian farming villages. In 2019, a 2-year-old died after falling into a well, while in a separate case that year, a baby was rescued after being trapped for 2 days. A Chilean swimmer has set a Guinness World Record for swimming 5,000 meters in the frigid waters of the Strait of Magellan, which connects the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. On Wednesday, Barbara Hernandez took up the challenge, accompanied by a naval vessel near Chile's southernmost point of Cape Horn, and swam for 15 minutes and 3 seconds. This is not her first extreme swimming accomplishment. Nicknamed the Ice Mermaid, Hernandez also swam 7 kilometers in 2 hours and 11 minutes in Chile's Lake Chungara, the world's highest lake at over 4,500 meters above sea level. The 36-year-old was also the first woman to swim across the Beagle Channel, a strait shared by Chile and Argentina. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good morning. It was a wet and murky Wednesday. Temperatures stayed below 20 degrees Celsius all day in the capital. Well, it's another rainy start in Seoul, but once the rain lets up, temperatures will rise much higher today. On and off rain continues through lunchtime in the upper regions. Then skies will get brighter in the afternoon, while certain parts of the country should stay mostly sunny all day long with high to very high UV rays. Well, morning temperatures are a couple degrees higher than the same time yesterday, hovering in the upper teens. Then highs will be 3 to 7 degrees higher across Korea. Seoul and Gwangju both going up to 27 degrees Celsius this afternoon, and normal to good air quality expected nationwide today. Afternoon highs in the capital region will start to hover around 30 degrees Celsius from tomorrow, with next Tuesday already marking summer solstice. With that, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
And that wraps up our newscast for this hour, but we'll be back tomorrow for our Friday's edition of New Day at Arirang.
Thanks for tuning in, and do stick around for more updates throughout the day. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are. Goodbye.